Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Coast-to-Coast Combat Hour. I'm your host, Matthew Hawkins, and as always, I'm joined by my co-host, Ed Carbajal. Ed, Happy New Year, brother. How's it going?
Happy New Year, man! Happy New Year to everybody on the that listens to us. And I don't know about midweek New Year's is a little rough for everybody. I think it kind of messes up your timing. It felt like we were off longer because New Year's Eve was. I mean, we with the holidays, we did that one Sunday RIZIN pod, but it still felt like we didn't record because of I'm just used to it. And speaking of which, before we get started with what we're going to talk about this week, some housekeeping notes. We're going to change our recording day to our 2023 schedule, where we'll be recording on Wednesdays. So new episodes will be Wednesday evenings, Thursday morning. That's just because my teaching schedule is changing over at the jiu-jitsu place and other stuff is happening. But yeah, just a quick housekeeping note. But man, yeah, 2025, man. I'm feeling good about a lot of things. I'm excited to see what some people are doing. Some people look like they're going to be doing things worse, and some people we just don't know, but they're new. And we talked about the GFL last week, and I'm looking forward to picking up what they put down, at least for now. But I think I'm just going to get into it. Don Davis. So I'm sure by now folks saw Don Davis shared that post, I forget who shared the Don Davis's post from LinkedIn, which I post on LinkedIn, but I post more. I post where anyone will click the stuff that I write for the folks that I write it for. But there's ways you can post in different places. It's just a good way to get some traffic. However, the platform, you want to bring business to you, you don't want to drive it away. And he posted, some people call it transparent. Whatever he posted if I was an investor and I had money, it would, and a fighter, I'd be if I was a fighter in the PFL, I'd be worried with everything he posted. I don't think he should be. If you're going to be a founder director, do it in the realm of Lorenzo Fertitta, where he was just, I'm here, I'm out of it. Let Ray Cepho or whomever run it. He's not good at whatever he should be doing. He's not doing it right.
Yeah, well, so he posted on LinkedIn the 5 bad things that happened to the PFL in 2024, and it just sounded like the most unprofessional. Again, I don't post on there. I'm not a CEO of whatever he is. I don't. What in what world would him posting that? I think you posted on Twitter probably the best thing I've seen about it. If I'm an investor, why the hell would I give this guy my money?
Yeah.
And then on top of it, we don't even get a couple days into the year, and they're not $1 million tournaments anymore. We know where this is going, and we wanted to end 2024, hopefully not bashing these guys, but they kind of just served it up on a plate. I don't understand all the stuff going on. He'd just be so much better if he just kept his fucking mouth shut and just kept his computer turned off.
Yeah, and I think that speaks. I think that speaks to something I've been saying for a while. I don't think they talk to each other over there. I don't think Peter Murray and him are having any Slack conversations or like you and I, we message each other through Twitter /X. And I don't think any of that's going on. I think he's just posting, running amok, and I'm pretty sure after the fact they're saying like a lot of us are like, what are you doing, bro? What are you doing? And I don't know. I want to be more. We talked about this last podcast. It'd be nice to have more than just the UFC. But to your point, something you said that stuck with me from the last time we recorded was I kind of just want them to take over everything now, because if stuff like this is going to happen, at least the fighters kind of know where they stand when they're in the UFC. They're getting fights. It's just I wanted to, when nobody, people that follow me know I've covered a lot of PFL events when they were WSOF and they switched over to the PFL. I was on board with it. I love the format. I thought it was the best format for fighting because you win, you get no trash talking. No, you don't have to do social media or shenanigans. It was just winning and advancing, and every year was a new tournament. But now it's just like, I don't know, man. That's kind of why I want to see what okay, GFL, your turn. Let's see what you got.
I just don't, I don't want there just to be the UFC, but if this is the other option, then I want it just to be the UFC. That's the thing. Like, there's not a Scott Coker out there right now. You know, there's not a Saki Kabara in the United States right now. And he's got his issues too. I mean, let's not sugarcoat some of the stuff that's gone on in Japan, but I don't know if that's there's just not a Monty Cox. There's not even any of these. I wouldn't trust the guy to run a hot dog stand from what I've heard from the guy. I mean, literally he kind of goes to prove that like rich businessmen are not all smart.
Yeah.
I mean, and maybe he's smart. He made money somehow, but he's definitely not cut out for this. And the fact that it's not just me and you who tend to maybe, or me, I shouldn't speak for you, but tend to like to go after some stuff when I see it. That's just stupidity. You're seeing normal people on Twitter who normally wouldn't ignore this stuff and have nothing to do with it. Like just going, what the hell? I mean, you got guys who are just major fight fans who watch the fights, don't pay attention, don't really, it's never been really an issue. We've never seen this before. Dana White talks a lot, but we've gotten used to that. It's over 20 years of it. And he's knowledgeable. We can knock Dana White all we want, but he's fairly knowledgeable on the sport. I can't, does he remember every fight? Does he remember everything? No. Does he know every technique? Probably not. But he seems like he's at least involved in the sport and he can talk about it a little bit. I don't get that vibe from Don Davis. You got it from Coker. Coker could go out there and talk about fighting, MMA, boxing. You could go talk to the guy about karate probably for 4 hours in a row.
Yeah. And he's somebody that, like, if you say the right thing about martial arts and fighting, I mean, he can talk for I wrote about it. I've talked about in this podcast how he'll just sit up late. He sat up late by himself watching his own product, even though he already knew the results. He watched it on TV because that's how much he loves it. And this guy is the opposite of that, and it's really, really showing.
And we're not just speculating. This isn't just speculation. He came out and admitted he doesn't watch MMA.
Yeah.
Which we talked about on another past show. He couldn't even name his best favorite. Like, he couldn't even name anything. Did you see their fights of the year? Did you see their fight of the year voting that they had for the PFL website? And it was like 4 or 5 fights were from the same fight card.
Yeah. And
they didn't even have the fight that they tweeted out as one of their greatest fights in the history of PFL. Like the night it happened. It was just everything. Everything is just a shit show with them. And you don't know when their next event is. I mean, first of all, they're not even really a United States company at this point, right? Is it fair to call them international?
Yeah. I mean, they might as well be Saudi based at this point.
I mean, I would say they're Saudi based. Where if they have any base in the world, it's in Saudi.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, as far as a fight mecca home.
I don't know what happened with them, man, because one of their big investors when they first did this PFL thing, I can't remember his name, but he was the guy that owned what is now the Ocean Resort. Used to be the Revel. That's our freaking background here. They have a great space to hold events. They've held PFL events there. You can see that's the top of a UFC cage. UFC's been there when it was the Revel, the Ocean Resort Casino. When that gentleman passed away, and it was like misfortune, it was like a car accident or something. He passed away, but he was somebody that, like, when they first started, like they did a lot in Atlantic City because he was like using my property, using my ballrooms, like it was. This is when they were still like, I wanted to root for them, but now it's just like I don't know what's happening. I don't know what's happening with the money. I mean, I know they're supposed to be better than us because they're handling these $1 million deals, but I mean, handling them and losing millions of dollars or handling them, you know what I mean? Like, you're not really Gordon Gekko of the fight business right now if you're going out there and saying, you know, yeah, you're being transparent, but you're also like you're so disconnected not only with your product but like with the people that quote unquote work for you, the fighters, which pretty much are your product when you look at the fight business.
From day
And
one. From day
yeah,
one.
I mean Corey Anderson, champions, not just some mid-tier, like people holding titles, champions, and the Bellator acquisition move could have handled it so many other ways. I wrote about that too, where there was a lot of opportunity for them to do things. You want to do something different, and you have this roster. Scott Coker was doing something interesting. It's just the people that owned them that obviously lost interest. A lot of people like to fault Scott Coker. It's not him. Don't forget he was an employee too that lost his job when all that stuff happened. So, yeah, it's hard to even watch, and the more he's making, the more he puts out there, I think he's making more people less interested, and it sucks for the fighters. They're the ones that are
Yeah.
suffering.
I just, yeah. I mean, it was fine before they did the Bellator acquisition, but now when you've got all these big name fighters, that are just being shelved. I mean, it's sad to know that, like, they basically have taken what was Gegard Mousasi's last fight?
Yeah, well, I think he's
2 years ago,
isn't he
3 years ago.
he's suing them, isn't he? Isn't he suing them?
Oh yeah, he might be suing them, but my point is essentially they've ended his career.
Yeah.
Pitbull. I mean, he's not. Now I'm not saying he's ending his career, but he's no spring chicken. He's been through battle after battle. You sit every month you make Pitbull sit out without fighting as he gets a month older. I mean, I don't want to see him in the UFC at 38, 39.
Yeah, you don't want to see, and I hate to say it, but you don't want them to Michael Chandler Pitbull, because like Michael Chandler should have been in the UFC maybe a while ago, but he was doing so. Bellator was doing their thing with him still.
Yes. He was making money. He was fighting a lot.
Yeah.
And that's so that's different. Pitbull wouldn't be saying a word. He wouldn't care if he was in PFL if he was fighting every 6 months. He'd be happy to be. He's a prize fighter. He'd be happy to make the money. He just looks at from the outside looking in. It looks like he's looking at his employer, and he has no dates on his schedule. And he's looking at him, and they're going, "Oh, we're gonna have you fight here. Okay, who am I fighting? Oh, well, we don't know yet. Well, do we have a date? Do we have a venue? Do we have a country? No, we don't know yet. I mean, I don't. I
who
feel
knows?
Like he probably grew out of that phase of fighting, like in 2008. You know what I mean? Like I don't, 2012, 13. I mean, at what point did these guys? Because they worked for Bellator, which I know had its ups and downs. It wasn't perfect. Scott Coker wasn't perfect. Everybody makes mistakes. They put on fights they necessarily shouldn't put on. There's some promotion that's done probably incorrectly. There's, we've seen it. They've signed some guys they probably shouldn't have signed. There's mistakes are made, but it's honest mistakes. This is just like, and they're not necessarily self-inflicted in a sense that they're honest mistakes. This is not an honest mistake. This is pure stupidity. Putting stuff out about your weaknesses as a company and your, like I just,
I don't know if you saw that I forget where the two pieces, and it was within like 8 or 9 days. This is when we were off during the holidays, but Don Davis did an interview with Newsweek or some guy that does stuff for Newsweek. And he said, okay, 34 events for 2025. And then within like 10 days of that interview, he spoke to someone else. I forget the outlet. But then they were like, oh, 30 events. So you've already dropped your numbers of events. Like stop talking to people. Just stop. You're not good at it. Like just stop when you have stuff.
Well, what was his math? What was his math on having as many top 25 fighters as the UFC? Like didn't he have some kind of weird calculation?
Yeah, it's in the Newsweek piece. If you look at the Newsweek,
he was comparing his big events to Apex cards.
Yeah.
And fight nights. And like, well, if you look at the Apex card this past weekend, there was only 3 ranked fighters and we had 12.
Yeah.
Never mind, like his fighters are ranked 20 through 25. Like,
Yeah.
because he doesn't say top 10, he doesn't say top 5, or maybe he says say top 10, but none of it makes any sense with that guy. So, anyways, let's move on from that. Another quick little stupidity note. I did watch Raw last night, which was first on Netflix.
Mhm.
Great production. I will say that. Everything about it looked outstanding. I know the arena that they had it in at the Intuit Dome is brand new, loud for some of the camera angles and stuff they had. That was cool. My biggest takeaway was the early announcement from Triple H that it was the biggest arena gate in WWE history, and hearing the crowd break into cheers
Mhm.
reminded me of the idiocracy I see with MMA fans for the last 10 years of the UFC, reminding us, basically start with Madison Square Garden, that we decided to charge you more than any event in the history of our company, and
Yeah.
you paid it. Joke's on you. Now we're going to mock you. Difference is, I guess, WWE fans on Twitter seem to realize they're being kind of mocked, and the fans that cheer that are idiots. Meanwhile, MMA fans will cheer that again this weekend and the following weekend, and every other weekend. Dana White tells them that they broke a gate. We'll talk about it like it's good news. So, TKO gets into WWE. Suddenly, I couldn't afford to go to that event. It was a damn Monday Night Raw. I couldn't afford to go to the event. That's how expensive tickets have gotten now for that. So,
and we were saying that. Remember when the merger happened, we were like, get ready, WWE fans, because you're gonna be where we were back then. Now they're there. We're back then, like, where it's just like, wow. I remember I used to be able to go to these things without putting up
without spending $450 to sit in the top row of the upper level.
Yeah.
So I don't know, but I just thought that was funny. It was kind of like the introduction of Netflix, and like, let's let fans know from this point on, we're gonna let them know that,
Mm-hmm.
And the thing about the WWE is those numbers don't have to be real. I mean, the UFC, they don't have to be real either, but there's a little bit of reality to some of the numbers. Wrestling's got a long history, an all-time history of constantly just changing numbers for arena. So they could basically tell every arena that they've broken the gate record and get cheers out of the crowd and find out who the real people who are willing to spend 5 times what it used to cost just 2 years ago. So but anyways, let's move on to New Year's Eve. RIZIN, well, the 30th. Our New Year's Eve.
Yeah, man. I can't say enough of how, like, and to be fair, before we even talk about it, I don't know. I don't remember if I messaged you or not, but like the night that night of, because we recorded that Sunday, and then so it was starting on Monday night into Tuesday for us here on the East Coast. And I'm looking at the thing, and I signed up for it because I'm like, I know I could do the playback and stuff. I'm like, I at least want to watch the opening ceremony and the first few fights. And bro, I passed out because I had to go to work and everything too. So I was out before all of that. But when I got to work, I was able to. It was actually busy at my job, but I was able to. In the morning, I was able to catch the main event with Koike and Suzuki, right? Mm-hmm. And that only was that fight good, but I think it speaks to, because they used they used Verdict. It's the first time RIZIN used Verdict, and a lot of people had Suzuki winning, and then obviously the judges in the arena picked Kleber to win, and I was just like, it made me think about Jesus, what Sean Wheelock told us, like perception matters for where you're at. But it also made me think about something that I talked about a long time ago with Renzo Gracie, where like the knowledge and the experience of the judges when it comes to martial arts and fighting also plays into effect. Like we have a lot of judges, especially out here, that are like they came from boxing, and they're just they're not very great, or they're or nepotism or what have you, and they're just not. They just don't know the game of. They don't know the ins and outs of all the ways you can win in an MMA fight, but they're still judging these events. And I think that's not the case in Japan because of their long history with the sport. Those judges probably have better eyes than any Vegas judge. You know what I mean? I just thought I thought it was great. I love watching. I love what they do over there for New Year's Eve in MMA in Japan. I do want to say Suzuki gave that fight away, by engaging Koike on the ground. I don't know if it was cardio or an ego thing, but like if he had just stood up and made him stand up with him, he could have scored. He could have teed off on him and scored a decision victory that way. But pretty much what Clever did on the ground. So
it was a good fight, though. It was a good, close fight. I did have Clever winning, but like you said, I think Suzuki may have left a little bit. Points or credit or however they want to talk about.
Yeah, no, and I get why Clever won because of he pretty much what Suzuki did standing. That's what he did on the ground. He just did it with grappling instead of striking. So I get it. I 100%. That's what made the fight so good.
Yeah. So I was able to. I watched it till. Shoot, for me, the main first fight started about 8:30ish, probably my time. I watched it till about 2:30 a.m. Passed out for a couple hours. Woke up, looked at the clock, saw it was 6 a.m. Had my iPad laying there, pulled my iPad out, and it just happened to be the start of the Horiguchi fight. So nice. I watched the Horiguchi fight, which was fun fight too. This Zulu guy who I didn't know anything about. I'm not going to sugarcoat anything. Had Horiguchi stumble to come. I mean, it was a fun fight, and I look forward to watching that Zulu guy. He kind of reminded me a little bit of like an Anderson. I don't want to exaggerate, but like a young, because he's just lanky and the striking and stuff was. And he kind of looks like him a little bit too. I had to feel like this guy might end up being something. I didn't know who he was, but like there's something for the fact he went to a decision with Horiguchi. Would tell me the guy's a good fighter. I don't even have to know. I mean, he could lose a boring decision and he still can be a good fighter to Horiguchi because Horiguchi's a machine. But it was fun. I mean, there was moments that I thought he was going to pull it off. Or not pull it off, but like, whoa, like what? This is unexpected slightly. So I saw that that fight ended, and I was like, okay, well, I know I'm going to got about 15 minutes probably before the main event. Rewound it, caught the Azawa match. She totally it was a mismatch. We talked about that armbar, and then I watched the Roberto de Souza fight. I mean, we won't. There's a freshness to the submissions in a ring. There's a freshness to like seeing two title fights won by, or a title fight won by a submission, and then the main event be a grappling, the grappler win it. Like it's just refreshing and it's just different, and maybe it's the lack of skill. I don't want to say, you know what I mean? Like maybe the defense isn't quite there yet. Some of these guys are still, even if he's 14-0, maybe still hasn't been in certain situations. I don't know. I don't know what it is. Maybe Souza's just an outstanding grappler, which he is. Don't get me wrong. The crazy thing is I saw that guy compete at like Metamoris 4 or 5, maybe. Yeah. Like, and I watched him grapple somebody, and it was like, okay, who's this kid? I didn't know who he was, and now he's like, now he's like the king of Japan. I mean, he's he's like a longtime champion.
Yeah, man.
Now, it's fascinating. It's just fun. It's fun. It's fresh, and it's just different than the other MMA that we see stateside. Yeah.
It's like electric is the word that comes to mind when I think of it. It's like electrifying. I mean, you get a jolt. Like I was trying to, if my work schedule wasn't so screwed up for the holidays, I would have had the energy, because I've been up for them before. I mean, when I did the results that one year when I did the Bellator RIZIN crossover event, that was probably one of my favorite New Year's Eve where or pre-New Year's Eve days where I stayed home, because I watched the whole event straight through, and it was fun. And again, like I ordered it knowing that I was going to watch the replay and still have fun watching it, and it always delivers. And that's one thing I wanted to. I said it after I put it on social media, but I want to say it on the podcast too. RIZIN, it's first of all, it's affordable. It's not crazy expensive, and the way they delivered it, like I love the graphic that they did before every match. It kind of it wasn't intrusive. You get the whole screen to watch everything, just when the fight starts, you get a little bit of side note, and then it goes away. There's nothing
It's
there.
camera zoom. It's
Just,
like the old Pride
yeah,
a little bit. Yeah.
yeah, and it's just watching the fights, and I was just like, man, this is like, I don't know why not everyone's not doing this.
And Michael Chavello.
Yeah.
I mean, I love listening to that guy. I mean, the nostalgia is enough, but the guy,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the guy's a machine when it comes to statistics and fight history and stuff. So mass respect for that. It's a fun show, man.
Yeah.
It really makes me want to get out to Japan. It really makes me want to get out to experience the whole, just to be there. I don't know. It just
and
seems
it's
like
funny
it would be
because it's it's called RIZIN Decade. They're celebrating. I mean, so their 10th one doing it. And I didn't even hit me that when they started in 2015. And I remember that Scott Coker had that card play. He did something with I forget the guy that is it Kevin K that used to run Viacom Spike Broadcasting. That he got them to show the event the next day on our New Year's Eve. We got to watch it on Spike TV or whatever the channel was at the time that we got to watch it, and I was just like, man, this is something. And that was when RIZIN first started, when Sakakibara was kind of like coming back out of the ruins of not doing anything, and kind of this is a lot of people joke around and call it Pride 2.0, but it is. And now here he is now 10 years. He's made it 10 years. That's longer than the PFL. I don't think the PFL is going to make 10 years, but it's like it's something to be proud of. And I'm just kind of like, whatever him and Dana White have talked about, whatever deal that they're doing, Dana White keeps talking about whatever we talked about last podcast. I hope whatever the UFC is going to do, they do it with Sakakibara and them and just make them make them popular. I think it's time, man. The sport is big enough. Sport's big enough now that we can all get on board with something freaky,
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that's gonna. I wouldn't expect too much. Like we said, I think the best thinking's maybe they're gonna send some fighters over there, and we're gonna get a little bit of a mix, and some guys are gonna get some experiences. I mean, you see, Shorty Torres' comments on Twitter, and he's like blown away by the whole experience.
Well,
and
if you watched, was it last year or the year before? When Khabib had never been to I forget who he cornered when he went to their event, and there's a shot of him sitting ringside, and he's just sitting there with his mouth open because he's like, and then when they asked him afterwards, he was like, "What the?" He even said he was like, the UFC needs to start taking notes. Like he was just like in awe of. He was like, whatever everyone else is doing it wrong. He was like, you got to do it like this. Like there's, I forget what year it was, but you can see it. He's like,
you're right. I remember it was. I think it was last year.
And he's sitting there with his mouth open because he's like a kid in a candy store. He's like, holy shit, this is amazing. Like,
wow. Yeah. No, I mean, just a. It looks like it's just an experience and something we didn't already mention. Sakuraba, little Sakuraba picking up a 26-second knockout. I will tell you, I sat down ready for that fight, and it was the last thing I expected. But it was it was a little bit of a Ken Shamrock. It wasn't like the most devastating finish of all time, but he hit him hard, and it was unexpected, and he dropped it. Herzog was refereeing, so it's not like I felt like it was any kind of like, Yakuza necessarily. Like, throwing in the towel. But
it's one of those things too where like the shot that drops you is the one you never see coming, and obviously Yachi was focused on his attack, and he wouldn't expect him. When your foot gets grabbed, your mind automatically goes to, let me defend the takedown. I'm about to get tripped, and you're not thinking about catching one on the chin. So it was legit, and it was. I like that he kept with the family tradition of coming in there with his leg wrapped up,
wrapped, the mask on, Saku mask. Yeah, it couldn't have been easy for Yachi because you're fighting a guy who's the son of a legend, and B, there's no footage.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't necessarily know if he has any good striking, or you're thinking Sakuraba. I'm thinking like karate chops, slaps, kind of like weird, awkward stuff to get you to the ground, not a double chop. A right hand of the mouth, double axe handles and stuff like that. But But yeah, whereas Yachi's had 40 fights, so you know Sakuraba, and then probably could sit down and be like, hey, if he reaches for your leg here, blast him. You know what I mean? Like there's a million. You know what I mean? You got some footage and stuff, and Sakuraba's a genius when it comes to the sport of MMA and fighting in general. So, just a great show though. Look forward to their next one. I hope they keep to build. I like in a sense that they've kind of kept it homegrown. They haven't really went out and tried to land a big fish. I don't know. There's a lot of big fish that necessarily they can afford. I'm not sure how that works with them, but I like how they're keeping it pretty true. They've got their champions. They weren't. You know, I feel like if Dana White was owning them, when they kind of got embarrassed by Bellator, I feel like there would have been a major shift on like who we want to be champion. You know what I mean? Like, well, okay, this guy lost. Like, we can't have. You know what I mean? Like, but they fought through that, and they've come back, and now their champions are winning fights again, putting on good fights, getting stoppages. I just think it's cool. It's cool, and it just shows that having that head to head didn't hurt anybody.
Yeah,
it didn't hurt them in the long run. They lost 5-1, or they got swept. I mean, it was pretty rough, you know. But nobody remembers that. They were just fights. Yeah. Everybody just remembers it was good fights.
Yeah, everybody wants to see good fights, fun fights, and you know, we want to see the best fight the best, and that was them doing their best to do it, and it's again, and it speaks to the quality of the fighters that fought in Bellator. That was, you know, you and I know agree when Bellator was Bellator, they were definitely the number 2 to the UFC's number 1, and those guys can hang with anybody, and even when they did it with the PFL, they did PFL versus Bellator. They pretty much waxed the whole card, like they won the whole. You know, it was lopsided. So, all but one fight, and it's just something that again, talking about Scott Coker and the talent in Bellator of what it was something to behold. But you know, it's 2025, so let's keep our fingers crossed and chins up and positive attitudes for what we got in store. There's a whole year ahead of us of BKFC and MMA stuff to watch, and hopefully GFL doesn't pull a WFA on us and do a one and done. But this weekend the UFC is back. Everybody crying about no UFC, so finally we get to stop seeing those posts, and they're back. And it is an Apex card, but there's some fights of note on there. The main event is a rematch between Mackenzie Dern and Amanda Hebos. So, I mean, if you needed a reason to watch anything, these two honeys is definitely definitely worth watching again, because I mean, for whatever reason, great martial artists, great fighters, great women, but I mean, obviously not too hard on the eyes either. But I mean, so last time Hebos won a decision, I believe, and Mackenzie Dern says she's got some evolution in her skill set that she's gonna be bringing to the Apex on Saturday. We'll see, man. I mean, I for one will enjoy watching this. I don't know how. I don't know, man. I feel like when it comes to MMA, I think Hebos still has the edge, so I'm leaning her to win the fight. But I mean, you know, I hope they're friends after.
All right. Yeah, I want Dern to win. I've been a fan of hers since I met her before she even had her MMA debut at Metamoris, getting back to those days of seems like lifetimes ago. But she does terrible against girls who can punch and have any kind of takedown defense.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what Hebos has. And unless Dern's got something new, then I think she'll lose again. I mean, I think it'll be the same kind of frustration where she'll probably lose a close split decision or a close decision, where you were like, if she was just this a little bit better here or didn't do that, or, you know, then she could have won. But seems like she's just kind of been on the wrong side of a couple close decisions, and other fights where she just kind of got beat. Now I know she's 14-5 and Hebos is 13-5, but I feel like Hebos has had a better level of competition and I mean, she came during her first loss. So if Dern's got any reason to have a kind of a revenge, it would be that. So
Yeah.
I don't know. There's a possibility. You know, it's not like Dern can't beat her, but I'm gonna go with Hebos. She won the last time. I'll go with her again.
All right.
And I do hope they are friends afterwards.
Yeah. So one thing about this card, I mean, I know it's in the Apex. It's early, just for folks know. Main card starts at 7. Prelims are at 4 p.m. That's all Eastern time, my time. But I did want to mention this is Austin Bashi's debut officially in the UFC. His you can see he's got the Contender Series gloves on in this picture. No odds for that fight. He faces Christian Rodriguez in his UFC debut. Bashi is a young fighter that if you want to see his library of fights, he fought for a promotion called Lights Out, not the Merriman one. It's another one called and they stream on the platform that I write for, Spectation Sports. You can go back and watch all his fights there to see what this kid is made of. He's somebody that if you're looking at the future of MMA in the sport, I mean, these fighters are coming in younger and younger. And Bashi is one of these guys that, like, at a very, very young age, just knew he wanted to. This is where he wanted to be. This is what he wanted to do. He's undefeated, 13-0. But we know things are different when you finally are in the UFC. And this fight will be very telling of where he goes from here against Christian Rodriguez. So, I mean, Rodriguez coming off of a loss, fighting somebody that's making their debut, he probably is going to come with more edge, show a chip on his shoulder to kind of shut down the kid with a lot of steam behind him. But Austin Bashi was 19 when he first started fighting. If you remember, he was like the XFC Young Guns. Remember the XFC?
Mm-hmm. That's how I got familiar with him.
Yeah, and he was like that. They had this thing outside of their featured fighters. They had the Young Guns, and Bashi, he's still young, but he was 19, when he did that, and now he's here. He is 22, I believe. He's 22 years old, going on 23, and smart kid. I've interviewed him a lot. Again, you can see all those interviews. I've shared the clips here, but on Spectation Sports YouTube channel, you can check him out. And he's just a long time coming for this kid, and I'm proud to see him get there. And I'm it's one of the fights that I really am looking forward to on this card. And I know there's a lot of other fighters on the card, but just one more I wanted to mention for us East Coast folk. Fatima Klein is back. If you remember, she took a fight short notice that lost that. She took that fight short notice, but she's somebody that can do make some waves in the UFC in the strawweight division. And I'm looking forward to this fight against Dudikova. I wouldn't be surprised if she submits her, picks up a win by submission. But there's 3 fights that are on my radar for this event, and I'm definitely like on board with the UFC coming back and getting the fights going, getting the sport going, getting some fans, putting some new names in the fans' mouth. Looking forward to it.
Yep, and then the big pay-per-view will be the following weekend.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, I look forward to getting back to watching these cage fights again, starting off 2025. Again, want it to be a positive year. We just had to, Don Davis makes it impossible not to comment on some of the stuff. But going forward, obviously, we want it to be positive. We're hoping the best for everybody. We're hoping that people, just let's have a good year of great fights. No cancellations. If I had one wish, it would be like, let's cut the cancellations down. Let's get back to, not that there was ever a time there wasn't, but it just,
speaking of just you talk about pushing forward and doing what the fuck you want to do and just trying to bring the best fights you can bring to people. BKFC, they just opened up more seating for I forget which event it was. The Alvarez one, the 25th. Yeah.
Yep.
They literally they sold out and they opened up more seating. Talk about a promotion that just said, fuck what everyone else is. Don Davis needs to follow Feldman's he's just focusing on what he's doing and putting fights on. He's not trying to compare himself to anybody else. He's not, or anything else, because he's doing his thing. And that's how Scott Coker used to do it. That's what David Feldman's doing. it fucking works. That's what Dana White did. Like, it fucking works. Like if you if you're gonna mention the competition, you're doing advertising for them.
You tell me all, you say it all the time that I was on board from day one with them, and there was something, obviously the violence and the difference was something that attracted me, but when you see an organization's got Sean Wheelock, an organization's got Chris Lytle, this company, they're and again, we all had our questions, but I think a lot of our questions came about from the other BK organizations that really shit the bed when they tried to get involved in this. And we don't know, again, there seems to be a money flow with BKFC. They seems to be good at partnering. I'm not going to defend Conor McGregor, but I do like Feldman's statement on the situation. He's going to stand by him. It's a tough situation, but I do think as a businessman, it's the correct thing to say, and it's the right thing to do to keep your, a stupid comment there could, in theory, throw a lot of things into tailspin, and you affect a lot of people. So I think he made a correct comment on it. If you're going to make a comment, I think it was a fair comment to make. I just think that they're doing stuff right, and they're selling tickets. They're not overpricing the tickets. That's allowing them to do this, and I hope it doesn't get to the point where it becomes a major expense, because they need to get, there needs to be. But see, then they come around, like next weekend is in Pechanga, so there's going to be a 4,000 seat place. It's going to be, tickets are still available now for probably you get the door for about $70, I think, for a small arena. $100 gets you you're 30 feet from the ring. I mean, there are, so there is access to it. That's the whole thing that I think these companies need to grow is you got to allow fans to have access to it. And unless you're the UFC and you're like able to charge $1,000 a seat and it's just a rich people 1%er thing, then if you're anybody else, you have to get the common man. You have to get the U's of the world. You have to get the me's. You have to get my friends. You have to get people. I got friends who are contemplating going to BKFC. I'm taking 5 people, and there's a couple more that are talking about going. You know what I mean? You have to get people. It has to be affordable. I can't, I can go, hey man, we're sitting ringside BKFC. It's going to be $200. Or we can go to UFC tonight and we can sit in the last row of the arena. It's going to be $700. What do you want to do? You want a mouthpiece landing on your chair, or do you want to be watching a big screen for 7 hours? You know what I mean? Like, and this will be my 8th BKFC event next week. And I have never, I can't think of a boring fight. I've probably seen 60 fights in person, 70 fights in person. And I'm looking at like 60 knockouts. I mean, I'm probably at like an 85% KO ratio. I mean, you talk about a wild experience and a fun thing. It just, you need to have access, and the more they give access, I think it's going to continue to grow. And as long as they say the right things, they get the right sponsorship, they don't blow their wad on something stupid, they don't go out there and try to they don't need to pay Conor McGregor to fight. You know what I mean? Like, you don't need to do anything that stupid right now. If Alvarez and Little Heathen is allowing you to sell out the arena in Philadelphia, a basketball arena in Philadelphia, and they're adding more seats, then don't overspend on anything. Just keep it up. Just keep it up and let people watch Eddie Alvarez. Because for me, people that tune in to watch Eddie Alvarez who maybe never watched Eddie Alvarez might click back on YouTube. Might find Alvarez Chandler's 2 fights. Might look at Alvarez and Dos Anjos. You know what I mean? Like, and then you see the greatness of one of the greatest lightweights of all time. And I don't always agree with the guy. In fact, but Fight Oracle made a good point today on Twitter about how they're able to take these semi-washed up dudes and basically repackage them. And they're doing a damn good job of that, but they're not getting. I don't feel like it's washed up scrubs. I feel like it's washed up. There's some legends there. Chad Mendes is not a legend, but he is a top contender, all time. What? Top 50. I mean, that's being probably top 25 of all time in his weight class.
Well, not for nothing. You look at what they did with Mike Perry. Mike Perry was like before, when he was in the UFC before BKFC, he was the guy it was fun to make fun of him. And now it's like Mike Perry's a guy that he's when it comes to bare knuckle, Like look at the reaction. Like when he wound up fighting Jake Paul. I know he lost to Jake Paul, but look at how people's attitude changed when Jake Paul switched from fighting Mike Tyson. As far as fight fans go, I know the numbers with the Netflix and the Mike Tyson. That's something completely different. But like as far as piquing the interest of fight fans, as soon as Mike Perry's name was added to that banner with Jake Paul, people's they didn't tune in just to see like they did on Netflix with the Tyson Jake Paul thing. People were interested in seeing it because they're like, wait a minute, Mike Perry's a fucking scary guy to throw hands with, and he still is. So
yeah, and that's BKFC because of a fucking scary sport.
Yeah.
Our friend Fernando Gonzalez is fighting again next week. I mean, it'll be his third BK fight in a year. You know, I mean, it takes it's a mindset. It's a focus. It's different. And but I like everything they're doing. I like that they're expanding. I like that they took it slow. I like that they were in barns. I went to an event in some places that I will never ever step foot on. You know, like it was the middle of. I'll be disrespectful if anybody from Salina, Kansas is listening to our podcast, but you're in the middle of nowhere. You know what I mean? The fact that they're in Philadelphia, the fact that they're in LA, the fact that they're Temecula, which is a suburb of, Temecula or San Diego and basically LA. The fact that it's right here it's wild. It's cool. It's everything they're doing is great. The fact that California allows it still blows my mind. It would have been the last thing I ever expected.
Yeah, I remember when he did that press thing in New York with the Lobov and Malignaggi. Like I asked him, and I think the interview might be on this YouTube channel, but I was just like, you think you're going to come here you think you're going to get New York to come over? And he was kind of like, I mean, because it's New York. I mean, they look how long it took them to get MMA. Yeah. So, BKFC's got a lot. They still have some battles to win, but
they have battles to win. But New York will jump on the bandwagon when they see there's money to be made.
Oh yeah.
And if you've got money to be made in Philadelphia, which is basically driving distance from New York, we'll see. We'll see. It would not surprise me if by the middle of this year suddenly we get BKFC.
I'm surprised Jersey hasn't. I'm surprised New Jersey hasn't come
jumped on it.
Yeah,
jumped on it and filled the Revel and these other places with.
Yeah, I mean we've got new venues that they could fill, and it's like
I know, but you could have new venues, old venues, small venues. I mean, that's what I'm saying. They allow with their options for their fight nights. There's so many options, and they like to bounce in a state and do a couple, a big show and a small show, and it's just cool. So I don't know. I look forward to them. I think they're the promotion of the year going forward. Probably for us. We'll see how it unfolds. But I do know the excitement level there is a little higher. It's a great UFC card next week to get this year kicked off too. The pay-per-view. So I don't want to undersell that. But I do look forward to this.
Hey, Danny, our homeboys over at the last round wishing us happy New Year to the best boxing podcast out
in the world,
out there in Matt's neck of the woods.
We're carrying a lot of weight on this West Coast, Ed. Carrying a lot of weight over here.
Yeah.
Anyways, thanks, Danny. Thanks, Mike Shepard, for the compliments there. Definitely appreciate that. I think we should end it on that. It's a good note. Fans can follow the show at Combat Hour on Twitter, Coast-to-Coast Combat Hour on Instagram. Follow me, Matthew Hawkins, at MMAHawk21 on Twitter and Instagram. Follow Ed at Carbazol on Twitter, Carbeersall on Instagram, Old Head Carb on Twitch. Thanks for listening, everyone. Happy New Year. Enjoy the fights this weekend. Hopefully they're friends at the end. And Ed has a review next week of the UFC's main event.
Oh, look at it really quick. Before we close it out, they're going to have Andy Foster. And they've had Andy Foster before on the last round podcast, and he usually drops some good stuff. So let's just after UFC in LA this month, send us questions. So yeah, we'll do that. We definitely will do that.
That's us, our listeners. Anybody out there, send questions. Feel free to reach out and send questions to what's the handle there? I don't want to screw that up.
The Last Round Podcast. I don't know their does it show on here? No. But the Last Round Podcast, you look them up, you'll find them. They pretty much have it everywhere, and I always reshare their stuff on Twitter/X. So if you're following me, you're probably following them too. But yeah,
it's true.
A lot of good guests they got on that podcast.
Awesome. All right. Good night, everyone. Thank you for listening. Peace.
Peace.